Timothy Burns, known as Tim to his friends, checked his cell phone after leaving a message for his wife of 5 years, Candace, who preferred to be called Candy. He had just finalized a service contract with a large California company with offices nationwide. This new contract signified a significant expansion for his IT firm and a substantial increase in his salary. Tim hoped that this financial boost would finally allow him and Candy to start a family as they had planned. However, Tim's happiness was clouded by concerns that had surfaced after a recent camping trip with his boss, Jake Hudson. He noticed a change in Candy's behavior upon their return from the trip. She appeared distracted and irritable, which raised suspicions in Tim's mind. His unease grew when he discovered a suspicious substance in one of Candy's panties, leading him to fear the worst. Determined to uncover the truth, Tim sought legal advice from Ruby, a family law and divorce specialist recommended by a friend. Tim expressed his concerns about Candy's fidelity and his readiness to pursue a divorce if necessary. He decided to hire an investigator to gather evidence of Candy's potential infidelity. As Tim prepared to travel to the West Coast for business, he equipped himself with tracking devices and recording equipment to monitor Candy's activities. Despite his discomfort with the situation, Tim felt compelled to uncover the truth about Candy's actions. Further suspicions arose when Candy mentioned working as a waitress at a party hosted by Jake without Tim's prior knowledge. Tim's doubts intensified, prompting him to contact the investigator for updates. His fears were confirmed when he received evidence that Candy had spent the night at Jake's house and engaged in intimate activities with multiple individuals, including acquaintances Tim once trusted. Devastated by the betrayal, Tim struggled to come to terms with the shocking revelations about his wife's infidelity. His world shattered as he confronted the harsh reality of Candy's actions. Overwhelmed by grief and disbelief, Tim grappled with the heart-wrenching truth that his once-beloved wife had betrayed their marriage with multiple partners, including individuals he had considered friends and colleagues. As Tim processed the painful truth, he faced the daunting task of navigating the impending divorce proceedings and the dissolution of his marriage. The betrayal he experienced at the hands of Candy and those he once trusted left him reeling with a profound sense of loss and disillusionment. He concluded his business with a California client and, with the contract in hand, checked out of the hotel and caught an early flight home. Upon arriving home, he noticed Candy's car was missing. Checking the tracker, he saw that her phone was still at Jake's house. He entered his home, changed his clothes, and called Ruby's office. To his surprise, the receptionist informed him that Ruby was available to see him in the afternoon. He dialed Candy's cell phone and was taken aback when she answered, sounding out of breath. "Hello?" she asked. "Hi, it's me, Tim," he replied. "Where are you?" "I'm home, just finishing up a few things before class starts," she responded. He was shocked by her blatant lie. "I see," he said. "Well, I'm done in California and heading home." "Oh, okay," she said. "I missed you so much. Call me when you land, and I'll pick you up at the airport." "No, don't worry," he said. "I'll take a taxi. Bye." Ending the call, he wondered if she had noticed that he hadn't expressed his love for her, or mentioned seeing each other later. Shaking his head, he left the house to visit Ruby. Candy glanced at her phone after Tim ended the call. She realized he hadn't said, "I love you," as he usually did. His tone also seemed unfriendly. Initially, she had intended to return home after the first night, but the allure of being with Jake and his son kept her there. She justified it to herself, thinking she owed it to herself. She believed it would all end once classes resumed, and Tim would remain unaware. Thus, she spent the following day and night with Jake and his son, Mike. On the second day, while Jake went to work briefly, Mike kept her occupied and even arranged for some of his friends to visit. Upon Jake's return, she was engaged in intimate activities with Mike on Jake's bed. Afterward, Jake remarked, "Maybe I should send your husband away more often," with a sly smile. "You know my classes are starting soon," she replied, "so I won't be available for a week. I wouldn't dare do anything while he's still at home." "Why not?" Jake inquired. "Perhaps he'd enjoy seeing how real men treat you for a change." They both chuckled at this. "I had a great time," she admitted, "but I still love Tim, and I don't want to hurt him." "Maybe I can arrange for him to be away for the weekend," Jake suggested. "Then you can come and play with us at the house. "It sounds amusing," she said, "but eventually he'll find out. Tim isn't foolish, you know." "Don't worry," Jake reassured, picking up a video camera. "I'll handle Timmy boy. There's just one thing." "What's that?" she asked. "I don't want you to be intimate with him anymore," Jake stated. "You belong to us now, understood?" "How can I manage that?" she inquired. "You'll think of something," Jake replied. "Come up with an excuse, like having a headache or similar." "Okay, I'll try," she agreed. Later that day, several of Mike's friends visited, providing an opportunity for Candy to engage in various activities. Jake invited some single men from the group, solidifying her role as a party participant. Tim was stunned when he saw the evidence Marvin had gathered. Alongside photographs, Marvin had DVDs showing his wife in compromising situations with multiple men, actions she had never taken with Tim. His love for her waned as he witnessed her behavior. Ruby attempted to console him, but it seemed futile. How could she, after 5 years, become such a traitor? He pondered. What did I do to deserve this? And Jake, whom I considered a friend, now I know better. "I'll proceed with filing for divorce, citing adultery," Ruby informed him. "I can also file a lawsuit for alienation of affection against Jake and your colleagues. While these lawsuits often don't progress far, we may secure a favorable settlement." "Do what you must," Tim replied. "Just avoid any reckless actions," Ruby cautioned. "I don't want to bail you out of jail." "Don't worry," Tim assured her. "I won't. When can you prepare the documents?" "I can have everything ready to send in a couple of days," she replied. "In the meantime, try to maintain a semblance of normalcy with your wife." "I'm not a good actor," Tim admitted, "and I'll never touch her again. Who knows what she contracted from those men?" "Tell her you're unwell," Ruby suggested. "It should buy you some time." Tim nodded in agreement. "Yes, okay," he said before departing. Sitting in his car, he realized he couldn't continue working for Jake and couldn't bear the thought of being around men who had betrayed him. He scrolled through his contacts and dialed a specific number, hoping for a positive outcome. "Carlson," the man on the other end answered. "John, this is Tim Burns," Tim said. "Tim, how are you, old friend?" John inquired. "Could be better," Tim replied. "Is that position at Empire still available?" John Carlson, Empire's CEO, had been eager to bring Tim on board for some time, but Tim had remained loyal to Jake. However, that loyalty had dissipated. "Of course it is," John confirmed. "Have you finally decided to join a reputable company?" "Yeah, something like that," Tim responded. "Certain things caught my attention, and I realized I couldn't continue working there." "I'm sorry to hear that," John sympathized. "Is there anything I can do?" "Just offer me a job," Tim requested. "I promise to work as diligently for you as I did for Jake." "Absolutely," John agreed. "Can you start on Monday?" "Definitely," Tim confirmed. "Okay," John said. "Why don't you and your lovely wife come over tonight to try Rose's famous lasagna?" Tim expressed his regret that he couldn't bring his wife along and suggested catching up to discuss the compensation package. John inquired about the reason for Tim's distress, prompting Tim to decline elaborating over the phone. He agreed to delve deeper into the matter later that evening. John suggested that Tim's wife, Rose, a licensed counselor, might be able to offer assistance. Tim welcomed the idea, and John promised to inform Rose. They arranged to meet at 6:30 p.m. that day. After ending the call, Tim felt relieved and drove home. Upon arriving, he noticed his wife, Candy, had not returned from Jake's house. He proceeded inside, took a shower, changed clothes, and composed a resignation letter on his computer. Candy arrived around 5 almost p.m. and found Tim at the computer. She attempted to kiss him, but he turned away, indicating that he wasn't feeling well due to possible jet lag. Tim mentioned he had plans for dinner and left without further explanation, leaving Candy concerned about his behavior. Candy called Jake, expressing her worries that Tim might suspect something. Jake reassured her, suggesting that Tim needed time to process things. Candy expressed her love for Tim and her fear of losing him. Jake hinted at a plan to ensure Tim's compliance without causing harm. Feeling cornered, Candy reluctantly agreed to cooperate. Meanwhile, Tim arrived at John and Rose Carlson's house with a bottle of wine. John welcomed him and introduced Tim to Rose. They enjoyed a meal together, during which Tim praised Rose's lasagna. John inquired about Tim's sudden departure from Jake's company, prompting Tim to share his story with them. "Damn," John said. "It's chilling. I sympathize with you, I really do. Something similar happened to me, but the circumstances were completely different. So, what are you going to do now, other than change jobs?" "I've met with a lawyer, and I'm filing for divorce," Tim said. "My lawyer says it will be a pretty much even split." "What about a consultation?" asked Rose. "Did you think about that?" "This has gone too far," Tim said. "I don't know what hit Candy. It's like she just flipped a switch and suddenly became a slut. I never thought she would have the strength to do this." "How do you cope with all this?" asked Rose. "Not too good," Tim said. "My lawyer says that I should try to behave normally around Candy, but it is very difficult for me to do this. Right now, I can't even look at her." "Maybe you should see a psychologist," she said. "I can do it," Tim said. "Trust me, Rose is the best in the business," John said. "I think she can help you get through this if you want. In addition, this is included in your social package." "That's definitely a plus," Tim said, laughing. "I'm serious," John said. "Rose was a godsend when I needed her. I know she can help you too." He turned to Rose. "What do you think? Can you fit it into your schedule?" "Of course," she said. "I think an hour a week should do the trick. What do you say about this, Tim?" Tim thought about this proposal before answering. "Okay, I'll do it," he said. John smiled and patted Tim on the shoulder. "A good man," he said. "I will make sure that you have the time necessary for consultation. Deal with Rose and let me know what you come up with." "I'll do that, thanks," Tim said. "Now, if you don't mind, honey, Tim and I will retire to my office to discuss his new job," John said. "I don't mind at all," she said with a smile. "And I'm looking forward to working with you too, Tim." "Thank you," Tim said, standing next to John. They retired to John's home office, where he poured them each a glass of brandy. They spent the next 2 hours discussing his new job. By the time they finished, Tim felt like he was taking control of his life again. Tim shook John's hand and headed back home. It was around 10 p.m. when Tim arrived at his house. He looked around and saw that the lights were still on in his house. He hoped Candy was there alone. He got out of the car, walked into his house, and saw Candy sitting on the sofa. "So, how did your little meeting go?" she asked. "Very good, thank you," he said. "Now, if you don't mind, I'll go to bed. Good night." He went into the second bedroom, where his computer was, and began to undress. "Are you sleeping here now?" Candy asked from the door. "Yes," said Tim. "I'm still not feeling well, so I'll sleep on the futon." "Is this a problem?" she asked. "No, I think not," he said. "It's just that you've been gone for 3 days, and I was hoping that we could, play a little." "I'm not in the mood today," Tim said. In fact, the thought of touching her right now made him disgusted. "Okay," she said quietly. "Maybe tomorrow." "I don't know," he said. "Let's see." She nodded her head and turned away. She couldn't help but wonder if he even knew anything about her actions lately. The next day he got up before Candy, grabbed his resignation letter, and poured himself a cup of coffee. He saw Candy's purse on the kitchen table and grappled the audio recorder, then downloaded the audio recording of yesterday's phone call. He left the apartment without saying goodbye or telling Candy that he loved her. She heard the door close as he left and went to bed, tears rolling down her cheeks. When he got to the office, he barely spoke to anyone. He greeted his secretary, then walked into his office and closed the door. He was gathering his things when Jake walked into his office. "What is this?" Jake asked. Tim reached into his briefcase and pulled out 2 envelopes. "One of them is a signed contract from California," he said, "and the second is my resignation, effective immediately. I believe you owe me a bonus for getting the California bill, and you owe me my final salary, along with the rest of my vacation." "Resignation?" Jake asked in shock. "What the hell? Why are you leaving? I need you." "Seriously?" Tim asked. "You really don't know why? Do you think I'm stupid or something? You know that's not true. To be honest, some things caught my attention, and I decided I couldn't work here anymore, so I got a job at another company. I'll be leaving you in just a few minutes." Then I went to the HR department. "Wait, Tim, can't we talk about this?" Jake asked. Tim shook his head. "There's nothing to talk about, Jake," Tim said. "I'm over it. Finished. I considered you my friend, but you stabbed me in the back and ruined my marriage." You can find someone else to cook, hold. So that's what it's all about, Jake said. Well, just so you know, your wife was more than willing to have sex with me. We shouldn't let something like this ruin your career. Just go with the flow for a while. Let Candy sow some wild oats for a while. When she's done, she'll be all yours again. Do you really think I would agree to something like that? By the way, how long have you been having fun with her? Tim asked. Well, the first time was at the campsite, Jake said. On the second day, when you and the others were skiing, and you should know that she pestered me that day. She even told me that I'm bigger than you. She begged me to have sex right there. Tim never turned down Candy. He tried several times, but he just couldn't do it. He couldn't explain why, and Candy never said anything about it. And this was around the time you suddenly forced me to leave to take care of some things at the office, wasn't it? Tim asked. You wanted to get me out of the way so you could have sex with my wife. Jake grinned and nodded his head. Yes, so what? He asked. And this whole thing about hiring her as a waitress at your party was just another excuse to get her into bed, wasn't it? Tim asked. Yes, it was so. So what? Jake asked. Tim stopped the audio recording on his phone that he had started when Jake entered the office. Thank you for your recognition, Tim said. Now, if you don't mind, I'm done packing. I'll go to the HR department and won't bother you. Wait, Jake said. You can't use this recording. We'll see, Tim replied. I'm leaving here. Goodbye, Jake. You'll rot in hell, okay? You forgot something, Jake said, picking up the photo of Candy that Tim kept on his desk. I haven't forgotten, Tim said. I do not want it. You and your son want this traitor so badly that you can take her for yourself. I'm done with her, and with you. Goodbye. With these words, he left the office. Jake watched Tim walk away, wondering what had just happened. How did Tim find out what he and his son did to Candy? He asked himself. What do you mean he resigned? Candy asked when Jake called. He just handed me the signed contract and resignation letter and left, Jake explained. He knows, Candy. I don't know how he knows, but he knows. What did you say to him? She asked. The truth, Jake replied. I told him about what happened for the first time, on the hike. You're an idiot, she exclaimed. Well, he asked, and I told him, Jake defended. He also left a photograph of you, which he kept on his desk. He said he didn't need it. Amazing, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. So, what should we do now? It's not my problem, Jake said. He's your husband. You can handle this, unless, of course, you want me to step up and make him see the error of his ways. No, she said. You've done enough, thank you. Stay away from this. As you say, Jake replied before hanging up. Candy looked at her phone with tears streaming down her face. She didn't want a divorce, but she knew Tim wouldn't tolerate her cheating. She decided she would do everything in her power to keep him. A few minutes later, Tim arrived home. He saw Candy's car and looked around for Jake's car. Without noticing it, he grabbed his box and briefcase and went inside. He saw Candy on the couch and, without saying anything, went into his office. He closed and locked the door, then checked for voice recordings. He found the recording and listened to the conversation between Candy and Jake. He forwarded it to his lawyer and quickly called her. Hi, Tim, she greeted. I just received your last email. Now I am preparing your documents. Okay, Tim replied. When can they be submitted? If you want, I can pull some strings, and my bailiff will deliver them later this afternoon, she offered. Will this suit you? That will be fine, thank you, Tim said. After hanging up, he walked over to his gun safe, opened it, and pulled out his old .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol. He had no plans to use it, but he didn't want any problems with Jake or Candy. He walked into the kitchen, put his briefcase on the table, and looked at Candy. We need to talk, he said, placing the gun on the table within reach. Is this really necessary? She asked, pointing to the gun. I hope not, he replied. I just want to make sure in case your lover decides to break in here. My lover? She asked. Don't play coy. I'm not in the mood for your games. Now sit down. We need to discuss something. She sat down, scared, not knowing what her husband was going to do. First things first, Tim said. Later today someone will come by and give you the papers. Candy recoiled in shock. Divorce? She asked. Why? I don't want a divorce. I love you. Bullshit, Tim retorted. I know everything about you, Jake, his son, and everyone else you've been having fun with the last few days. So, I filed for divorce on charges of adultery. Adultery? She asked. You don't have any evidence of this. Tim smiled, taking out an envelope. He produced several time-stamped photos, all showing her having sex with multiple men, including Jake. I also have video and audio, Tim said. Would you like to watch? She shook her head, realizing the hopelessness of the situation. Okay, Tim said. From now until you were served with the documents, you have time to pack up your things. Are you kicking me out? She asked, tears flowing down her cheeks. That's pretty much it, he said. But what if I decide to contest the divorce? She asked. Tim laughed. I don't think that would be very wise, he said. What do you think the school board would say if some of these photos and videos just happened to appear? Do you think the parents of your students would want someone like you to teach their children? I think not. You won't dare, she exclaimed. Do you want to take that chance? Tim asked. Candy looked down for a moment before shaking her head. No, she said. I'll need this job. That's right. That's how it will be, Tim said. There are a couple more things you should know. What? She asked dejectedly. You will be required to hand over your rings and give up my last name, he said. Oh my God, you've become a heartless bastard, haven't you? She asked, taking off her rings. Yes, Tim replied. You gave me a good reason. I just want to know one thing. What happened? What made you turn from a loving, faithful wife into a walking garbage dump? She lowered her eyes before speaking. It happened on the second day of the hike, she said. You were on the boat, and I was in the tent. Jake walked by and saw me. I had already undressed and was lying there, trying to rest, when Jake walked by and entered the tent. At first, he seemed embarrassed to see me so naked. We started talking, and then he pulled his pants down, and that was the end of it. So some asshole takes off his pants, and you immediately jump on him, Tim said, and that's all it took for you to become a traitor? How many times did you have sex with him on that trip? Twice, she said. The first incident occurred when you were jet skiing, and the second was when Jake sent you back to the office. Tim shook his head and pointed at the photographs. I see that none of your lovers use protection, he said. Weren't you concerned about pregnancy or contracting something from them? I'm still taking the pills, she replied. That doesn't guarantee you won't get pregnant, Tim retorted, and you can still get sick. Is this what you intended? Oh God, no, she replied. Tim shook his head. During our time together, I was often pursued by women who, compared to you, look like goddesses, he said. I turned them all down. Do you know why? Because I believed I had a loving and faithful wife at home, and I would never do anything to hurt her. But you didn't even consider the consequences of your actions. You didn't care about my feelings. I hope it was all worth it for you. Now, pack up your belongings. I expect you to leave once you are served with the documents. Tim, please, she began. Can't we seek help from a psychologist? I promise I'll never do this again. Can't you forgive me this time? I will never forgive you for what you did, Tim said, his expression more severe than she had ever seen. Never. Maybe if it had been a one-time slip, or if you were raped or drugged, I might have overlooked it, but that wasn't the case. From the moment Jakey exposed himself, you willingly played along, and I can never forgive such a level of betrayal. Don't you love me enough to work through this? She asked. No, I can't bear to look at you right now, Tim replied. The sooner you disappear from my life, the better. Now go and start preparing. Anything you leave behind will be either burned, discarded, or donated to charity. Sobbing, she rose and went to the master bedroom to pack her things. Tim observed as Candy brought out one full garbage bag after another. She paused and looked at him. Can you at least help me carry this to the car? She asked. No, Tim replied. It's your mess. You deal with it. And remember, anything you leave behind will be burned or thrown away. This includes photographs and your wedding dress. Would you really burn my wedding dress? She asked. My parents paid thousands for it. Well, then you'd better take it if you don't want it to burn, Tim said. Sobbing, she loaded the bag into her car and returned for another. Damn it, Tim thought to himself. How much stuff does she have? A couple of hours later, exhausted, she sat down on a bale. I can't fit anything else in the car, she said. Can I come back later for the rest? Please. No, Tim replied. You are not allowed within 150 meters of this place. Ask your parents to come pick up the rest if you wish. I'll refrain from disposing of anything for a few days. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it, she said. Oh my God, I was just thinking, what am I going to tell my parents? Try telling the truth for once, Tim suggested. Tell them you cheated on me with my boss and others, and I'll have you removed. Seriously? She asked. They'll disown me if I do that. That's not my concern, Tim said. But I assure you, it will be much worse if you try to portray me as the villain or twist the story. You know how your parents feel about lying. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. I think that's for you, Tim said. Candy walked slowly to the door and opened it to reveal the deputy sheriff. Candace Burns? He inquired. She nodded. Yes, it's me, she replied. Do you have any identification? He asked. She presented her driver's license, which he examined before returning it to her and handing her an envelope. You've been served, Mom, he said. There is also an injunction requiring you to vacate the premises immediately. You can sign the divorce papers now if you wish. She nodded and took out the divorce papers. After reviewing them, she requested a pen and signed the papers. I'll return this to the lawyer, he informed her. You must leave right away. If you attempt to return, you will be arrested and jailed. Do you understand? Yes, she replied, tears streaming down her face. She glanced back at Tim. I'm so sorry, she said. Yeah, me too, Tim replied. Goodbye. Goodbye, she whispered, departing. The deputy glanced at Tim and nodded before departing. The following days were tumultuous for Tim. Candy made no attempt to contact him, but Jake called his home phone twice, leaving threatening messages. Damn it, Tim! I know you're there, he shouted. If you don't drop this lawsuit, I'll come and kick your ass. Tim smiled, saved the voicemail, and forwarded it to Ruby, who then informed the local sheriff's department. Candy's parents also called, inquiring if they could retrieve more of her belongings. Yes, of course, Tim replied. Just ensure she is not with you. She has a restraining order against her. Okay, George, Candy's father, responded with a sigh. When Candy and her mother, Bernice, arrived, they collected what Candy had left behind and attempted to persuade Tim to reconsider the divorce. Tim, she made a mistake, Bernice pleaded. You can forgive her and take her back. She adores you. What did she tell you, Bernice? Tim inquired. She mentioned having a disagreement with your boss, Bernice replied. Is that all? Tim asked. Yes, she confirmed. She didn't provide any further details, and we didn't press her. Tim retrieved an envelope containing photographs and DVDs and showed them to Bernice and George. They were shocked by what they saw. I'm sorry she didn't tell you the whole truth, Tim said. As you can see, the situation turned out to be much worse than she let on. Oh my God, Bernice exclaimed. I had no idea it was this bad. I'm so sorry, Tim. I don't blame you for your actions. George's face reddened with anger. I will have a serious talk with our foolish daughter, he declared. Have you done anything else with these photographs? He asked. Tim shook his head. Not yet, but I warned her not to resist the divorce, he said. They commiserated with him for a moment and then finished packing up the rest of her things. Half an hour later, they left the house, giving Tim a warm hug and wishing him all the best. Later that day, as Tim was sitting watching TV, there was another knock on the door. He looked through the peephole and saw Jake, Mike, and two of Tim's former work colleagues. He walked into his office, grabbed the gun from the gun case, and called 911. Holding the gun behind his back, he barely managed to open the door before they rushed inside. We'll kick your ass, Jake growled. Tim pulled out his gun and pointed it at Jake, forcing them to stop. You're not really going to shoot us, Jake said. You don't have the courage. Do you really want to test this? Just so you know, I already called 911, and the police are on their way here right now. If you're here when they arrive, you'll go to jail for violating the restraining order, Tim said. Jake, I think he's serious, said one of the other two men. Jake looked at him for a moment, then turned back to Tim. It was at that moment that they all heard a siren nearby, and saw flashing red and blue lights. "Yes, Jake, I'm serious," Tim said. They turned to leave, but two very large uniformed police officers stood in the doorway. Tim lowered the gun. "Put the gun down, sir," one of the officers said. Tim obeyed, placing the gun on the kitchen table. "Sir, these people are violating the restraining order," Tim said. "They broke into my house and threatened me. I want them arrested." "Do you have a copy of the order?" asked another policeman. Tim nodded. "I have it, officer," Tim said. He pulled out an envelope lying on the kitchen table and handed it to the officer, who carefully studied the order. After a few moments, he returned the order to Tim, then turned to the four men. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," the officer said. The four men glared at Tim as officers handcuffed them and read them their rights. Once they were handcuffed, one of the officers turned to Tim. "Do you have a license for this firearm?" he asked. "Yes, I do," said Tim. "Would you like to see it?" He pulled out his wallet and showed the officer his driver's license and his NRA firearms training card. The officer nodded after studying the cards. "Okay," he said. "Be careful with this thing. Do you hear me?" "I hear you, officer," Tim said. "Thank you." The next 3 months passed in a blur for Tim. He enjoyed working at Empire much more than he ever did working for Jake. Weekly counseling with Rose helped him deal with trust and anger issues. At the same time, he joined a gym and worked out 3 days a week. He also began taking martial arts classes, more for mental discipline than anything else. On top of that, he followed a diet and exercise regimen recommended by Rose. The divorce went through the system with ease, especially since Candy didn't contest it. However, alienation of affection lawsuits were somewhat different. Ruby warned that they might eventually be fired, and 2 of them were. However, the case against Jake surprised both Tim and Ruby. After hearing testimony, reviewing the evidence presented by Ruby and Jake's financial statements, the judge ruled in Tim's favor and ordered Jake to pay $1 million in damages. At the end of the trial, he didn't have kind words for Jake. "Mr. Hudson, your conduct in this matter is beyond reproach," the judge said. "You not only took advantage of a man who considered you a friend, you abused your position as his employer to deliberately destroy his marriage and family. I also noticed that you have repeatedly violated the restraining order against you. I therefore find in favor of the plaintiff and order you to pay compensation in the amount of $1 million. "Your Honor, this is highly illegal," Jake's lawyer said, standing up. "Mr. Winthrop, this court finds Mr. Hudson's conduct not only unlawful but absolutely disgusting. The decision stands," the judge said. "When should this restitution be made?" asked Winthrop. "Immediately," said the judge, "unless, of course, your client chooses to spend some time in jail for contempt of court." "No, Your Honor, my client will pay as ordered," Winthrop said, sitting back down. "Okay," said the judge. "And God help you if that check gets rejected. Case closed." He banged his gavel, ending the hearing. Jake wrote out a check and gave it to his lawyer, who gave it to the bailiff. After the judge noted the check, the bailiff handed it to Ruby, who in turn handed it to Tim. To Tim's surprise, the check cleared the bank, and it paid Ruby her share of the judgment. While working at Empire, Tim was contacted by several of Jake's clients. Word of the lawsuit seemed to spread around the world, and a number of companies were leery of continuing to do business with someone who was intentionally ruining another man's marriage. In their opinion, a person who would deliberately destroy a friend's marriage simply cannot be trusted. The way things were going, Tim believed Jake would go bankrupt within a year. All this time, Tim refused to go on dates, although several very nice women from the company approached him. In his opinion, he would remain a married man until he received his final divorce. Once this happened, he would be free to continue relationships, but not before. When the divorce finally came, he went to celebrate with friends from work. A couple of months after finalizing the divorce, Candy's mother called him. "Tim, this is Bernice. Do you have a few minutes?" she asked. "Of course, Bernice," he said. "What's happening?" "This is Candy," she said. "She is HIV positive. She just received her test results." "I'm sorry to hear that, Bernice," Tim said. "But to be honest, I'm not surprised." After their divorce, Tim felt powerless to help Candy, as she was no longer covered by his insurance and he was not responsible for her. Despite this, Bernice pleaded with Tim to talk to Candy. Reluctantly, Tim agreed to visit Candy at Bernice and George's house. Upon seeing Candy's deteriorated appearance, Tim was taken aback. Despite her attempts to engage in conversation, Tim kept his distance. Candy revealed to Tim that she was HIV positive, a consequence of her reckless behavior. She expressed remorse for her actions and sought Tim's forgiveness. After contemplating her words, Tim decided to forgive her, realizing that holding on to resentment would not benefit him. Candy was moved to tears by Tim's forgiveness and urged him to find happiness in his future. Tim offered his support and encouraged her to seek help if needed. Candy acknowledged her mistakes and expressed regret for the consequences of her actions. Tim left, promising to be there for her if she ever needed to talk. Weeks later, Tim was shocked to learn of a tragic incident involving Candy, Jake, and Jake's son. The news reported a double murder-suicide, with Jake allegedly shooting Candy before taking his own life. Tim reached out to Bernice, who confirmed Candy's death. It was speculated that Jake's violent reaction was triggered by learning about Candy's HIV status. Tim expressed his condolences, acknowledging the tragic outcome of Candy's choices. Bernice accepted the reality of the situation, recognizing that Candy faced the consequences of her decisions. Losing one's only child is a difficult experience. I am relieved that you were able to find peace with her passing. I like to believe she is in a better place now. Let me know if there is anything I can do, he said. Thank you, Tim, she replied. Candy's memorial service took place a couple of weeks later, and Tim took the day off from work to support her parents. The autopsy results revealed that both Jake and Mike, like Candy, were HIV positive. It was determined that Candy had informed Jake about her diagnosis and suggested they get tested. Upon learning they were also positive, Hudson Sr. tragically shot Candy, then his son, and ultimately himself. Tim grieved for several days, reminiscing about the happy times he shared with Candy. One day, Cynthia Stone, a colleague from his team, unexpectedly visited him. "Hello, cowboy," she greeted. "Would you like to join us for happy hour tonight? You seem like you could use some company." Tim hesitated briefly, but then accepted her offer. "What the hell?" he said. "I could use some good company right now. I'll join you." "Great, then come to Hitchhikers after work, okay?" she suggested with a smile. "I'll be there," he confirmed. "Thanks for the invitation." As Cynthia left, Tim reflected on the continuity of life. He thought about subscribing to their channel to avoid future heartbreak, and eagerly anticipated the next story, recognizing that this one was just the beginning.